The golden son of Seti, you close your eyes and drift backward through the golden sands of time, past the hum of Cairo's modern streets, past the whispers of tourists gazing upon ruins, until the wind carries you deep into the Nile delta, where the river bends like a serpent of light. It is the 13th century before the Common Era, and Egypt stands as the beating heart of the world. The pyramids of Giza have already weathered 1,000 years. The great temples of Karnak glow in the sunlight, and in the city of Avaris, soon to be reborn under a new name, a child takes his first breath. They call him Ramses, son of Pharaoh Seti, and Queen Tuya. From the moment of his birth, the priests whisper that he is favored by Ra, the sun god. His very name means Ra is the one who bore him, a name chosen to shine like the rising dawn. You can almost see him, an infant, swaddled in linen, his tiny hand reaching for the light that pours through a carved window. Outside, the Nile gleams like liquid gold. Crocodiles stir in the reeds. Fishermen haul their nets as ibis birds take flight. The land itself seems to hum with divine energy, as if it knows that this boy will one day command its every breath. Seti I is a warrior king, a ruler, who restored Egypt's borders after years of chaos. His reign brings order, wealth, and glory. And yet, as he holds his son for the first time, he feels something greater, an unshakable sense that the gods have destined Ramses for immortality. Queen Tuya, known for her calm wisdom, gazes upon her child with quiet devotion. She teaches him grace, patience, and reverence for the gods. Seti, ever the soldier, teaches him discipline, courage, and the art of command. Ramses grows in the shadow of their greatness, but also in the warmth of their love. The palace buzzes with lessons and rituals. Scribes teach the young prince to read hieroglyphs, their symbols, dancing like tiny serpents across papyrus scrolls. The priests of Amun-Ra instruct him in the sacred ways of the temple, showing him how to walk in the presence of divinity without trembling. And in the palace courtyard, the boy learns to handle the chariot, its bronze wheels glinting in the sun as he rides with unshaken balance. Each morning begins with the same ritual, the rising of the sun over the Nile. Ramses stands beside his father on the terrace facing east as golden light spills over the horizon. The priests chant hymns to Ra, their voices echoing across the water. Ra rises anew, life is renewed, and Ramses, still a child, feels the heat of the sun on his skin and believes, truly, believes that the god himself has touched him. You follow the young prince as he walks through the grand halls of the temple. At Thebes, the columns carved with lotus blossoms and stars. He gazes upward, awed by the height, by the artistry, by the way each column seems to reach for eternity. One day, Seti tells him, "You will build greater temples than these. You will carve your name so deep into stone that time itself cannot erase it." And Ramses listens. He listens and remembers. Beyond the palace walls, Egypt is alive with labor and devotion. Farmers tend the black silt of the Nile's banks. Priests light incense in the sanctuaries. Traders arrive with goods from Nubia, Byblos, and the mysterious lands beyond the Red Sea. The world bows to Egypt's power, and Egypt bows to its gods. To live here under the rule of Seti is to live within a harmony between man and the divine. Yet even harmony carries the promise of change, and the young Ramses feels it stirring. When he is still a boy, Seti begins taking him on military campaigns. The chariots roll across the desert sands, their wheels cutting tracks through the dunes. Ramses watches his father lead armies of 1,000 soldiers clad in bronze, their spears gleaming beneath the blazing sun. He learns to command, to calculate, to inspire. The desert wind hardens his face, the sun burns strength into his shoulders. The boy grows into a young man whose eyes are as sharp as a falcon's. One evening, as the army makes camp near the borders of Canaan, Seti calls his son to sit beside the fire. The night sky above them is a tapestry of stars, and the flames cast flickering light on their faces. My son Seti says a pharaoh's heart must be like the Nile, calm on the surface, yet powerful beneath. You must know when to flood and when to flow quietly. Ramses nods, listening with the intensity of youth. Seti places a hand on his shoulder. You will rule one day, and when you do, the gods will test your heart. But remember, a pharaoh does not serve himself. He serves Marat, the balance of all things. The words carve themselves into Ramses's soul. They will echo through him for decades to come. Years pass. The young prince becomes the commander of chariots, the overseer of temples, the heir of Egypt's might. In the city of Memphis, he inspects the sacred workshops where artisans carve statues of the gods. In Heliopolis, he learns astronomy from the priests who track the heavens. In Abydos, he stands before the great temple of his father and feels the pulse of divine ancestry. Every stone, every inscription, every ceremony reminds him he is not merely a man. He is the vessel of the divine. And yet, even as he prepares to take the throne, Ramses remains human. You can sense his restless heart, his hunger to prove himself worthy, not just to the gods but to history. He dreams of conquest and creation, of building monuments that will make even the stars remember his name. When Seti dies, the land mourns. The priests chant prayers for his soul, and the royal barge carries his body down the Nile to Thebes, where he will rest among kings. Ramses stands beside his father's sarcophagus, feeling both the weight of loss and the mantle of destiny settle upon him. The drums of coronation begin. The priests of Amun-Ra raise the crook and flail before him. The people bow, thousands of them, as incense fills the air, and the sunlight glows like molten gold through the temple gates. Ramses kneels, then rises as pharaoh. The chants grow louder. User matre setepenre. Ramses chosen of Ra, and for a moment, as the sun ignites the Nile with a divine flame, you almost believe the legends are true, that a god now walks among men. Lessons of the Nile. The days after coronation unfold like the slow, shimmering current of the Nile itself, steady, unbroken, eternal. You stand beside Ramses II, now Pharaoh of Egypt, as he gazes from his palace terrace across a kingdom that stretches farther than the eye can see. The river glimmers below like a living ribbon of gold, the very artery of creation. Each breath of wind carries the scent of lotus and silt of harvests ripening beneath the sun, God's watchful eye. The priests chant his names at dawn, Usamatra Setepenre. The justice of Ra is powerful, chosen of Ra. The sacred words echo through the corridors of the palace at Memphis, through the avenues lined with sphinxes, through the open courts of temples where statues stand tall and eternal. Ramses listens, yet behind the mask of divinity, his mind is alive, restless, reaching. He knows that Egypt endures not by prayer alone, but by wisdom, vigilance, and the lessons carried on the river's tide. You follow him through the years of learning that follow years in which the young pharaoh transforms from student to sovereign. He rides daily to the fields where peasants toil beneath the sun, their bronze tools flashing in rhythm with the beating of his heart. They bow deeply as his chariot passes, shouting blessings and praise. Ramses watches them closely, the lifeblood of his empire. He knows that without their hands the temples fall silent, the granaries empty, and Egypt's power fades into dust. Each season brings its own ritual of learning. During the inundation, when the Nile floods and spreads its black silt over the land, Ramses travels along its banks inspecting dikes and canals. He orders new irrigation channels dug to harness the river's gift. The Nile, he says softly, is a god, but even gods must be guided. You see him in the workshops of artisans, watching sculptors carve his likeness into colossal statues. Every blow of the chisel seems to echo across eternity. He studies the craft, how pigment binds to stone, how gold leaf glows in the light. His fascination is not vanity, it is strategy. He knows that power lives as much in what people see as in what they obey. To rule Egypt is to rule imagination itself. In the evenings, the pharaoh walks among the temples with the high priests of Amun-Ra and Ra. The air is heavy with incense and the hum of chanting. Lamps flicker along the sandstone corridors. Together they recite hymns to mark truth, justice, and balance the unseen law that holds the world together. Ramses listens as the priests explain the cycles of creation, Ra's journey across the sky. By day, his descent into the underworld; by night, his rebirth with the dawn. He begins to understand that his throne is not merely political, it is cosmic. His role is to keep the universe itself from falling into chaos. If the river fails to flood, if famine strikes, if war breaks the balance, the fault lies not in the stars, but in him. At dawn you find him in the palace courtyard training with soldiers. His arms pull back the string of a bow carved from acacia wood. His arrows strike the mark again and again. Around him stand generals and charioteers, hardened men of Nubia, Libya, and Canaan warriors who have fought for his father before him. They whisper among themselves that Ramses rides faster than any man alive, that the sun god guides his aim. The pharaoh smiles quietly, but his eyes are sharp. He knows legends strengthen loyalty, and loyalty builds empires. Still, he hungers for knowledge that cannot be won with sword or chisel. One afternoon he summons the scribes from the House of Life, the temple libraries of Thebes and Heliopolis. They bring scrolls of papyrus inked with centuries of wisdom, records of floods, omens, decrees, and wars. Together they study the patterns of history. Ramses learns the mistakes of past pharaohs, Akhenaten's defiance, of Amun, Tutankhamun's fragile restoration, the lost wars of the 18th dynasty. Power, he murmurs, tracing a line of hieroglyphs with his finger, is not eternal. It must be rebuilt, reign by reign. When he speaks to his court, his words are calm but commanding. He speaks of irrigation trade and fortresses in Nubia. He orders new roads carved through desert rock, connecting the Nile to the Red Sea. He restores the temples neglected by his predecessors. Everywhere the mark of Ramses begins to spread a spark of renewal across the two lands. And yet beneath the calm surface, tensions stir like crocodiles in dark water. To the north, the Hittite Empire expands its reach across Syria, swallowing cities once loyal to Egypt. Their warriors are fierce, their kings cunning. Messengers bring word of shifting alliances of spies and secret pacts. Ramses listens in silence, then dismisses his counsel. That night he stands alone before the statue of Amun, the god of hidden strength. The temple is quiet, but for the low hum of torches. Ramses kneels. His voice is low, steady. "If the gods made me Pharaoh," he says, "let them make me worthy. Let them make my enemies tremble at the sound of my name." The next morning, he begins preparations not for war, but for readiness. He expands Egypt's chariot corps commissions. New weapons fortifies border towns. The temples resound with hymns to divine order, while the armories ring with the hammering of iron. The dual forces of faith and force united beneath his hand. And through it all, the Nile flows on patient eternal. At sunset you follow Ramses to its banks where the waters catch fire in the dying light. He stands barefoot watching the current, a god and a man in equal measure. He speaks softly almost to himself. The river teaches everything, he says. It gives, it takes, it changes nothing, yet changes all. Nearby, the priests of Heliopolis light the evening fires. The sound of drums rises over the breeze, slow and rhythmic like the beating of a heart. Ramses closes his eyes for a moment, listening, not as Pharaoh, but as a student of the eternal rhythm that binds gods, men, and the earth together. And you realize that Egypt's strength lies not only in its temples or armies, but in its unbroken connection between the mortal and the divine, between soil and sky, between the ruler and the river that feeds all life. As the stars begin to bloom above the horizon, Ramses turns back toward his palace. His mind is alive with vision of a city yet to rise, of battles yet to be fought, of monuments yet to pierce the heavens. The lessons of the Nile are complete. The next chapter of his reign, the age of expansion, of ambition, of glory, is about to begin. Crown of the living God, the sun rises over Thebes in a blaze of gold and crimson, flooding the temple courts with light. You stand among thousands gathered to witness the coronation, the day Egypt gains a new sun on earth. Incense clouds billow into the air, thick with the scent of myrrh and cedar. The rhythmic pounding of drums echoes through the avenue of sphinxes, where sacred bulls and priests march in solemn procession. The Nile glimmers nearby, reflecting the heavens, as if the gods themselves are watching. Ramses steps forward beneath the temple gate, his form tall and radiant, wrapped in linen woven with threads of silver and blue. His eyes are steady, not proud, but certain. The high priest of Amun raises the crook and flail, the symbols of kingship, and anoints him with sacred oils. The chants rise in waves, Usamatra Setapenre. Ramses, chosen of Ra Pharaoh of the two lands. The crowd bows low. The young king lifts his gaze toward the statue of Amun-Ra, the creator and sustainer of all things. The morning light catches the gold of his crown, turning him into a living flame. In that instant, Ramses is more than mortal. He is the embodiment of divine order, the bridge between men and gods, heaven and earth, chaos and balance. You feel the weight of it with him. The crown is not merely gold, it is a burden forged by time. Egypt expects not only peace and abundance, but the continuation of eternity itself. As the drums fall silent, Ramses raises his voice, calm, commanding, assured. Egypt will rise, he declares. Its temples shall not fall to ruin, its borders shall not fade, its name shall not be forgotten. As Ra renews the sun each morning, So I renew the glory of the two lands. The people cheer, their voices rolling like thunder across the river. In that sound, in that unshakable devotion, Ramses feels the pulse of his destiny begin to quicken. From that day, the rituals of divine kingship shape his every dawn. Each morning, priests awaken the statues of the gods with chants and offerings, lighting lamps and burning incense to sustain the universe. The pharaoh himself is part of this cycle. His prayers are not just acts of faith, they are the turning gears of creation. He rises before the first light washes in sacred water, dons the regalia of eternity, and greets the rising sun with outstretched arms. To the Egyptians he is Nefer, the perfect God. His bloodline is divine, his breath sacred, his word eternal. To question him is to disturb the cosmic balance, and yet beneath the ceremony there beats the heart of a man determined to make his reign the greatest Egypt has ever seen. You follow him as he takes the throne of state in the great audience hall. Columns rise like forests of stone around him, carved with hieroglyphs that tell the story of creation. At his feet, emissaries kneel, envoys from Nubia, Canaan, and Libya, their faces lowered in awe. Ramses speaks little, but his presence alone commands obedience. Later in private he turns to his advisors, the generals who fought beside his father, the scribes who guard Egypt's records, the priests who interpret the will of the gods. His words are deliberate. Egypt must not only endure, it must expand. We are the children of Ra. Our empire shall stretch from the cataracts of Nubia to the mountains of Syria. The court murmurs. It is a bold vision, one that risks the wrath of foreign kings. But Ramses knows the truth. Peace is fragile without the shadow of strength. In the months that follow, he begins to mold Egypt into a reflection of his divine ambition. He commands vast building projects, temples, cities, monuments, each designed to proclaim the pharaoh's eternal power. The quarries of Aswan roar with the thunder of hammers as stone is carved and shipped northward along the Nile. The artisans of Thebes and Memphis work day and night, chiseling his likeness into colossal forms that will outlive memory. You walk among these workers beneath the heat of the sun. Thousands of men and women labor in harmony. Stonemasons, scribes, carpenters, overseers, all united under one purpose, to bring the vision of their God-King into being. They sing hymns as they work, songs praising Ramses as he who endures forever. And indeed his endurance seems limitless. The pharaoh inspects his projects personally, riding in his chariot from site to site. At Pi-Ramesse, the city still rising from the marshes, he studies the layout of streets and palaces. In Thebes, he oversees the expansion of the great temples of Amun. Everywhere he goes, he speaks with priests, architects, and captains. His energy is unending, his memory flawless. He remembers every face, every command, every promise made. To the people, this is proof of divinity. To Ramses, it is discipline, the only way to rule an empire that stretches across deserts and seas. But with power comes the whisper of jealousy. In the northern territories, foreign lords murmur against Egypt's growing dominance. Ambassadors from the Hittite Empire send veiled messages, their tone both polite and warning. Let the borders remain as they are, they say. Let the peace endure. Ramses smiles when he reads their words. He understands diplomacy as well as war, and he knows both will test him soon enough. As night falls, you find him alone in the inner sanctum of a temple, standing before the statue of Amun-Ra. The god's face is serene, carved from gold eyes inset with obsidian that gleams like the night sky. Ramses places his hand upon the altar and whispers, "If I am your son, then grant me the wisdom of the sun to rule not only by fire, but by light." Outside, the stars burn across the heavens. The priests chant through the corridors, voices blending with the hiss of oil lamps. The sound feels eternal, like the beating of a cosmic heart. In that sacred stillness, Ramses' purpose crystallizes. He will not merely preserve Egypt, he will eternalize it. Through stone, through conquest, through the rhythm of faith and order, he will bind his name to the destiny of the world. Tomorrow his armies will assemble. Tomorrow the architects will begin new foundations. Tomorrow the world will feel the strength of the one they now call the living God. And beneath the stars of ancient Thebes, you sense the stirring of something vast, the beginning of a reign that will echo for 3,000 years. Building Pi-Ramesse, city of power, you awaken to the sound of hammers echoing across the delta plains, a steady rhythmic pulse that mingles with the cry of cranes and the soft hiss of the Nile wind. It is dawn in Lower Egypt, and the air is alive with the scent of wet clay and cedar. From the marshlands north of Memphis, an empire stirs. Ramses II, now secure on the throne, has set his mind upon a vision that will outshine all the cities of the ancient world. He calls it Pi-Ramesse, the House of Ramses, great in victory. The place chosen for it lies upon the old ruins of Avaris, once the stronghold of the Hyksos invaders centuries before. To lesser men, the swamps and reeds of the eastern delta would seem inhospitable. To Ramses, they are potential incarnate. Here at the crossroads, between the Nile and the road to Canaan, between Egypt and the empires beyond, he will raise a capital worthy of the gods, a living monument to divine order and imperial might. You can almost feel the ground trembling as thousands of laborers and engineers descend upon the site. Overseers shout commands, oxen drag sledges heavy with limestone, and barges glide up the canal bearing granite from Aswan. The work never ceases. Under the watchful gaze of their Pharaoh, men and women toil as though time itself obeys his will. From dawn until dusk the air hums with creation. Chisels strike rhythmically, ropes creak, and dust swirls in golden clouds. In the heart of this chaos, Ramses rides his chariot, his armor gleaming beneath the sun. He stops to speak with architects and foremen, his words clear, his tone calm yet firm. The city must breathe like the Nile, he says. Its arteries must carry both life and command. And so Pi-Ramesse begins to take shape. Wide avenues stretch from the royal palace to the temples of Amun-Ra and Ptah. Statues of the pharaoh, colossal, serene, unyielding, rise at every intersection, their faces sculpted in perfect likeness to his own. Soldiers train in great courtyards surrounded by obelisks, their bronze weapons flashing in the light. Stables filled with thousands of chariot horses line the outer districts, their neighs blending with the hum of craftsmen forging new wheels and spearheads. The palace itself rises like a mountain of stone and cedar. Its walls are painted in shades of red and gold, its columns crowned with lotus blossoms carved so intricately they seem to bloom under the touch of sunlight. Inside, Courtyards flow into gardens, gardens into halls, halls into sanctuaries adorned with murals of divine triumph. You can almost hear the echo of sandals on polished alabaster floors, the whispers of servants carrying offerings of honey and wine. And in the great throne room, vast as a temple, Ramses sits upon a seat of carved granite, inlaid with lapis and electrum. Behind him, a golden disk of the sun blazes from the wall, and every beam of light seems to bend toward him. Here, ambassadors from distant lands bow deeply before the Lord of the two lands. Messengers from Nubia, Byblos, and Cyprus bring gifts, ivory tusks, cedar logs, copper ingots, and jeweled necklaces fit for gods. Ramses listens to each in turn, measuring their words with the calm of a man who sees decades beyond them. His voice is even deliberate. Egypt is the heart of the world, he tells them. And as long as the heart beats strong, all else lives. You walk with him through the gardens as dusk falls. The air smells of papyrus and lotus, and pools of still water mirror the flaming sky. The pharaoh pauses by a pond where ducks glide across the surface. When my ancestors built their cities, he says softly, they sought to please the gods. But I will build to rival them. Pi-Ramesse will not fade. It will live as long as the Nile flows. His architects bow, but they know his meaning runs deeper. Ramses does not merely build for the gods. He builds to become one. Each structure of Pi-Ramesse is infused with symbolic purpose. The palace faces east to greet the rising sun of Ra. The temples align with the solstice, ensuring that twice a year the light will pierce their sanctuaries in divine precision. The canals mirror the constellations above, connecting heaven to earth. Even the streets are designed in sacred geometry, a map of eternity rendered in stone. At night, the city glows with torchlight. Fires reflect upon pools and pylons, and the hum of music rises from the workers' camps. Flutes, drums, and chanting blend into a sound like the pulse of the universe itself. The pharaoh often walks among them unannounced, cloaked in plain linen. The workers kneel in awe, but he gestures for them to rise. You build not for me, he tells them. You build for Egypt, and Egypt builds for the gods. In these moments you sense his gift not just as a ruler but as a master of presence. To the priests he is the chosen of Ra. To the soldiers he is a warrior without equal. To the workers he is the living promise of glory. Ramses understands something few kings ever do. Empires are not held by fear alone, but by belief. Years pass, and Pi-Ramesse becomes a jewel of the world. Its palaces gleam with imported gold, its granaries overflow, its docks teem with ships bound for foreign shores. Merchants from Crete and Phoenicia call it the city of chariots, for its armies are unmatched. The stables house more than 2,000 horses, the barracks nearly 100,000 men. From here, Ramses can strike north toward Syria, south into Nubia, or east toward Canaan. The city is both throne and sword, a testament to divine might made manifest. But within this triumph lies the whisper of destiny. Messengers arrive from the northern borders, bearing troubling reports the Hittites are gathering strength once more. Their armies swell with iron weapons and restless kings. Their emissaries speak of peace, but prepare for war. Ramses listens in silence. He stands upon the balcony of his palace, looking out over his shining city. The wind carries the smell of lotus and the murmur of the Nile. Let them come, he says quietly. The gods have given me a city, and I will show the world what it was built for. The torches flicker across his face, and for a moment he seems carved from the same stone that bears his likeness across the land, ageless, untouchable, and utterly certain. Pi-Ramesse, city of power, has risen, but in its shadow the drums of destiny begin to beat once more, calling Pharaoh and empire alike toward the thunder of war. The road to Kadesh. The sun rises red over the delta plains, turning the canals of Pi-Ramesse into molten gold. The city hums with motion, soldiers sharpening bronze blades, horses stamping in the dust, chariots gleaming in long rows beneath the morning light. You stand among them, the sound of drums rolling through the air like distant thunder. Ramses II, Pharaoh of the two lands, prepares to lead his army north to Kadesh, a city whose name will be forever carved into the annals of history. For years, the Hittite Empire has been expanding in the north, pressing against Egypt's dominion in Canaan and Syria. Their kings speak of alliance but act in shadow, whispering to Egypt's vassals, stirring rebellion in border towns. The city of Kadesh, once loyal to Pharaoh, now flies the Hittite banner. It is a challenge Ramses cannot ignore. You see him in the great courtyard of Pi-Ramesse, clad in a chariot commander's armor of gilded bronze, his red crown gleaming with sunlight. His sons stand beside him, young yet already hardened by military training. His generals Amenemhotep Pentawere and the loyal general Jehuti await his command. Ramses raises his hand and the drums fall silent. The gods have called us, he says. The land of Kadesh was given to Egypt by our ancestors. We go not for conquest but for balance, for ma'at. Let our enemies learn that Egypt does not forget. The crowd roars its answer, a cry that shakes the sandstone walls. Life, prosperity, health to Pharaoh. May he live forever. And with that, the army moves. Across the endless sands they march 4 divisions strong, named for the gods who protect them, Amun-Ra-Ptah and Sutek. Over 20,000 men, charioteers, archers and foot soldiers move in a vast, glittering column. The desert wind howls, carrying the standards of gold and crimson. You can almost hear the hiss of sand under the wheels of their chariots, the rhythmic stomp of thousands of feet. The journey north is grueling. Days burn under the sun's merciless gaze. Nights freeze beneath the stars. Yet Ramses rides at the front, tireless, unyielding. He inspects the ranks at every halt, ensuring discipline and faith. The gods march with us, he reminds them. Ra shines upon our path. As they near Syria, scouts bring word Kadesh lies ahead, guarded by the Hittite king Mu'atali II, who has gathered a massive host. But the messages are confusing, the numbers uncertain. Some scouts claim the enemy has fled north. Others swear they are camped near the Orontes River, hidden beyond the hills. Ramses, trusting the first reports, advances swiftly with his Amun division, leaving the others several miles behind. He plans to surprise the enemy, but destiny has its own design. You follow his chariot through the dust as he approaches the plain before Kadesh. The city rises on a mound beyond the river, its walls dark and imposing. Palm trees sway in the wind. The air is strangely still. Then from the horizon 2 men appear, ragged, barefoot, claiming to be deserters from the Hittite army. They kneel before Pharaoh, bowing low. "Great Lord of Egypt," they plead, "the Hittite king fears you. He has fled north to Aleppo. His troops are far away. Kadesh lies undefended. The generals murmur in approval. Ramses' eyes narrow, but the promise of swift victory gleams in his heart. Then we shall strike before the sun sets, he declares. Amun will deliver them into our hands, but the deserter's story is a trap. Even as Ramses leads his men across the plain, the true Hittite army waits 40,000 strong, hidden behind the hills on the far side of the Orontes. Their chariots, faster and heavier than Egypt's, stand ready in ambush. By midday, the Egyptian camp is set. Ramses rests in his command tent, dictating a letter to his scribes. The banners of Amun flutter in the wind. Suddenly a dust cloud rises on the horizon, massive, growing fast. The ground trembles beneath hooves. Before any messenger can reach him, the Hittite chariots crash upon the Egyptian lines. The camp erupts into chaos. You can hear the thunder of wheels, the screams of men, the clash of bronze on bronze. Horses rear and fall. Tents collapse in clouds of dust. The enemy slashes through the unprepared soldiers, scattering them like leaves before a storm. Ramses leaps into his chariot, calling to his guards. "To me, men of Egypt, stand and fight." He charges into the fray alone. At first his reins taut, his bow raised. Arrows hiss from his quiver, striking the oncoming chariots with deadly precision. His driver, loyal Mena, steers through the chaos wheels, spinning sand flying. For a moment you glimpse him, the Pharaoh ablaze with courage, his armor glinting like sunlight on steel. The enemy surrounds him, but he fights with the fury of 10 men. His voice rings above the noise. "I am Ramses, beloved of Amun. Stand firm, and Egypt shall endure." In the distance his scribe records the moment in trembling awe. No man was with him. He was alone, surrounded by thousands. But his heart was steadfast. Then, as though summoned by divine will, the Nearin Egyptian reinforcements from Amuru arrive. They crash into the Hittite flank, turning the tide of battle. The air fills with the sound of horns and war cries. The Hittites falter their lines, breaking under the renewed assault. By nightfall, the plain of Kadesh lies strewn with wreckage, shattered chariots, fallen warriors, the silence of exhaustion. Ramses stands at the center, his chariot bloodied his arm, trembling from the strain. Yet his eyes still burn with triumph. He has not conquered, but he has survived. And in surviving, he has become legend. In the days that follow, both sides claim victory. The Hittites withdraw north. Ramses returns to Pi-Ramesse, where priests and poets proclaim the triumph of Pharaoh, the mighty bull, who crushed 1,000 foes. Temples echo with hymns of praise. Artists carve his valor into walls and columns, ensuring that every generation will know how their god-king stood alone at Kadesh and emerged unbroken. But as you walk with him through the quiet halls of his palace, you sense the truth that no inscription will tell. Ramses knows how close it was, how thin the line between glory and ruin. He stands by a window, overlooking the moonlit Nile, his hands clasped behind his back. "The gods favored me," he whispers, "but favor must be earned again and again." Outside, the waters move in silence, reflecting the stars, eternal, unchanging, indifferent. And somewhere beyond the northern deserts, the Hittites still wait watching. The Battle of Kadesh. The sun stands high above the Syrian plain, fierce and unrelenting, pouring down rivers of light upon the armies of Egypt and Hatti. The ground trembles beneath the weight of chariots, the hiss of arrows, and the cries of thousands. You stand beside Ramses II, his armor gilded like the very body of Ra, as he faces the greatest trial of his reign, the Battle of Kadesh. The plain stretches before you wide and shimmering, split by the Orontes River. Beyond its glinting waters lies the walled city of Kadesh, fortress of the Hittite king Muwatalli II. Smoke from enemy fires curls into the air, thin and black. The wind smells of dust, sweat, and iron. Ramses' eyes narrow, scanning the horizon. Somewhere out there, the Hittites wait.
Moments ago he learned the truth. The supposed deserters who spoke of victory had been spies. The Hittite army is not far away. It is here, hidden, waiting.
A murmur ripples through the ranks. The Ra division marching behind has not yet arrived. The Ptah and Sutek divisions remain days away. Ramses stands with only the Amun division, a single quarter of his strength. He could retreat, regroup, wait for his forces to unite. But the thought passes like smoke. The son of Seti does not retreat. He mounts his chariot, its bronze wheels gleaming like suns. The reins of his horses, fiery chestnut stallions, tremble with energy. His driver, the loyal Menna, holds firm. Ramses lifts his bow high. Stand fast, he calls. We fight for Egypt, we fight for Ra. Let no man forget who commands this field. Then it happens. From beyond the hills to the north, a sound like thunder rises, the pounding of hundreds of hooves. Dust explodes across the plain as the Hittite chariot corps charges down in a sweeping arc, their formation a storm of bronze and wood. The ground quakes. The Egyptian scouts barely sound the alarm before the first wave smashes into the forward camp. The enemy's chariots are heavy and fast, pulled by 3 horses, each carrying archers who unleash volleys into the air. Tents collapse, soldiers scatter. The once orderly camp dissolves into chaos. Ramses spurs his horses forward. His chariot surges through the dust. Arrows whistle past his ears. To me he roars, "Men of Amun, rally to your Pharaoh." The scribes later claim he fought like Montu, god of war, incarnate. And as you watch, you believe it. His bowstring sings again and again, his arrows cutting down charioteers with deadly precision. He turns sharply, circling the enemy, striking from their flanks. His stallions scream as he guides them through the storm. But the tide is against him. The Hittite chariots crash through the Egyptian lines, cutting deep into the heart of the camp. The banner of Ra falls. The guards around Ramses break, retreating toward the river. For a heartbeat, all seems lost. Then something shifts. Ramses halts his chariot upon a low rise, dust swirling around him like smoke. He raises his hands to the sky. "O Amun, father of gods," he shouts, "where are you now? Have I not built your temples? Have I not filled your sanctuaries with offerings? Will you let Egypt fall?" The wind falls silent. The battlefield holds its breath. Then from somewhere deep within, perhaps divine, perhaps human strength, surges through him. He grips his bow once more. His voice, when it rises, is a roar that shakes the plain. "I am Ramses, beloved of Amun. I stand alone, but I will not fall." He drives forward into the enemy, his chariot blazing like fire. The Hittite soldiers, stunned by his audacity, falter. Arrows flash from his hands, spears strike from his path. The enemy wheels turn to pursue, but Ramses moves like a storm, unleashed, circling, striking, vanishing into clouds of dust. Behind him, scattered Egyptian troops begin to rally. They see their pharaoh radiant and unbroken, and something within them ignites. They shout his name, Ramses, Ramses the Mighty, and turn back into the fray. The Amun division reforms chariots, slamming into enemy ranks with renewed fury. From the east, salvation arrives. The Nearin Egyptian allies from Amurru appear over the dunes, a column of chariots flying the banners of the falcon god Horus. They crash into the Hittite flank with unstoppable force. The sound is like the cracking of heaven itself. The Hittites, caught between Ramses' revived forces and the fresh Nearin assault, begin to falter. The once triumphant wave becomes a scattering tide. Ramses presses the advantage, his chariots pursuing them across the field. The ground is littered with broken wheels, splintered shields, fallen men. By sunset, the plain of Kadesh is silent again, save for the moans of the wounded and the distant murmur of the river. The sun dips low, staining the Orontes red as blood. Ramses stands atop his chariot, breathing hard, his armor scarred and dust-covered. He gazes over the field, thousands dead neither side, in true possession of victory. The scribes will write that he triumphed by divine will, that Amun himself rode at his side. In truth, it was something far more mortal, his courage, his will, his refusal to yield, even when surrounded by death. He orders the wounded tended to the fallen honored. They have served Egypt well, he says softly. Their spirits shall join Ra in the eternal sky. That night the camp glows with torchlight. The survivors eat in silence, exhaustion heavy as stone. Ramses sits apart, gazing toward Kadesh's dark silhouette. He knows he cannot take the city now, not with his army scattered, and the Hittites still entrenched. The victory is incomplete, yet it is a victory nonetheless, for Egypt's king stands alive unbroken and more revered than ever. He summons his scribes. Write this, he commands. Say that Ramses, beloved of Amun, stood alone before 1,000 foes and prevailed. Let the walls of Egypt remember it forever, and they will. In the temples of Thebes, Abu Simbel, and the Ramesseum, his story will be carved in stone, the pharaoh charging alone into battle, his enemies crushed beneath the wheels of his divine chariot. As the night deepens, you sense the quiet weight of his thoughts. Perhaps he knows the truth that no mortal can fight forever, that even gods must make peace. But for now the stars shine above, and their light gleams in his eyes. He turns to his generals. Tomorrow we rebuild. Egypt marches home, not defeated, but eternal. The campfire flickers, the Nile wind whispers across the desert, and in the silence the legend of Ramses the Great, the living god who faced an army alone, takes root, immortal as the stone that will bear his name for millennia. The Treaty of Kings. The years after Kadesh unfold like the slow turning of the Nile, calm on the surface, but deep with unseen currents. Egypt breathes again. The army returns home through deserts and valleys weary, yet triumphant, its banners tattered, but still proud. You walk beside Ramses II as he crosses once more into the delta plains, greeted by songs, incense, and the cries of his people. To them he is invincible, the warrior king who defied an empire and lived. Temples ring with hymns to his valor. Poets sing of his divine chariot, his lonely courage on the battlefield. Across the land, artisans carve his victories into stone, depicting him standing tall before enemies who cower and plead for mercy. In the sanctuaries of Amun and Ptah, priests proclaim that the pharaoh did not merely win a battle, he restored Ma'at, the order of the world. But behind the triumph, Ramses knows the truth. Kadesh was not a victory carved in glory alone. It was a stalemate, a test of endurance that left both empires wounded. Egypt holds the south, the Hittites the north. The lands in between smoulder like the embers of a fire that refuses to die. Years pass, the memory of blood fades into dust, but the tension remains. The Hittites rebuild their armies under King Hattusili III, brother to Muwatalli II, while Egypt fortifies its northern borders and strengthens its garrisons. In the halls of Pi-Ramesse, Ramses listens to reports from his messengers. The generals speak of raids and rumors. Envoys from Canaan and Amuru plead for protection. The pharaoh remains silent for a long time, his eyes fixed upon a map etched into a copper table, the borders of empires drawn like veins upon the earth. "Too long have men bled for sand," he finally says. "A kingdom endures through its builders, not its battles." The court falls silent. For the first time, Egypt's god-king speaks not of conquest but of peace. The idea ripples outward like a quiet tide. Across the deserts and mountains, letters sealed with gold reach the court of Hattusili III. They bear the royal cartouche of Ramses the Saint, the falcon of Horus, and words that echo like the Nile's flow, "There shall be peace and brotherhood between us forever. No hostility shall rise between the sons of Egypt and the sons of Hatti. Should enemies threaten you, Egypt shall send aid. Should enemies threaten me, Hatti shall do the same. Thus the world will rest under the eyes of the gods." It is the first known peace treaty in history, not carved by the sword, but written by wisdom. The Hittite king replies in kind. His scribe records his words upon silver tablets. "From this day the lands of Egypt and Hatti shall be as one. The gods of the north and the gods of the south bear witness to our truth. May Ishtar and Ra strike down any who break it." And so it is done. The Treaty of Kadesh, or as it will one day be called, the Eternal Treaty, is carried by envoys between the two greatest powers of the ancient world. The tablets gleam like twin suns under the torchlight as they are read aloud before the courts of both empires. In Pi-Ramesse, the people gather in the plaza to hear the words. The priests raise their hands to the heavens, and the air fills with the sound of music flutes, sistrums, and chanting. Ramses stands on his palace balcony, the golden light of dawn washing over his face. He does not smile, but his gaze is calm. "Let the world see," he murmurs. Even gods must sometimes choose peace. The treaty brings more than words. Trade resumes along the coastal roads. Caravans carry cedar, copper, lapis lazuli, and fine textiles between the empires. Messengers travel freely under the protection of both thrones. In temples across Egypt, artisans carve scenes of diplomacy beside those of battle, a new kind of victory immortalized in stone. You walk beside Ramses as he presides over the signing of the alliance. In the great hall of Pi-Ramesse, emissaries from Hatti kneel before him. Their leader holds out a silver tablet engraved in Hittite cuneiform, its surface polished until it mirrors the torches that line the walls. Ramses accepts it with steady hands. His high priest intones the blessings of Amun-Ra. "May Egypt and Hatti live in harmony," the priest declares. "May the gods bless both thrones. May their sons and their sons' sons dwell in peace forever." Ramses steps forward. "Let it be so," he says. His voice is neither loud nor soft. It carries the weight of eternity.
After the ceremony, he walks with the Hittite emissary through the colonnade where papyrus ponds reflect the sky. You have seen war as I have, Ramses says. Tell your king this, I will build temples instead of graves. Let the gods find us worthy of what we end today. The emissary bows deeply. My lord, he says, you have made the gods smile.
In the years that follow, the alliance grows stronger. Egypt and Hatti exchange not only goods and letters, but bloodlines. To seal the peace, a Hittite princess travels down the Nile to become one of Ramses' queens. The event is marked by splendor unseen in generations. You watch as her barge glides into Thebes, sails shimmering with silver thread, banners snapping in the warm wind. Crowds line the riverbanks cheering as priests chant blessings to Hathor, goddess of love and unity. The young princess steps ashore, veiled and radiant. Ramses greets her with open arms, and the people cry out, "May this marriage bind the lands forever." In the temples, new carvings show the pharaoh beside his foreign queen, their hands clasped beneath the approving gaze of the gods. To the priests it is divine harmony. To the people it is proof that even empires can learn to share the sun. Peace brings prosperity. The fields along the Nile flourish, trade flows. New temples rise at Luxor, Abu Simbel, and Thebes. The stonemasons sing as they work, carving into the limestone walls. He who ended war shall live forever. And yet, when the night is still, Ramses sometimes stands upon the terrace of his palace, gazing toward the north, toward Kadesh, toward the land where thousands once fell. The torchlight flickers upon his face, softening its lines, but not its memory. Peace, he murmurs, is another kind of war, one fought in silence. You sense the weight of it in his voice, the understanding that even the greatest treaties cannot still the hunger of time. But for now the world rests, Egypt prospers, the Nile flows unbroken, and the two sons of civilization, Egypt and Hatti, shine together upon the ancient earth.
Temples for the gods and the dead.
The years of war give way to years of creation. Egypt exhales, and from that breath rises the music of hammers, chisels, and prayers, the heartbeat of an empire reborn. You drift again along the Nile, its waters gleaming like molten amber beneath the morning sun. Along its banks, cities hum with new life. And everywhere the hand of Ramses II builds, carves, and dreams in stone. For the pharaoh, peace is not idleness, it is the fertile soil from which eternity grows. Let the world know Egypt lives, he tells his architects. Let it be written in mountains and carved in light. His vision is staggering. From Thebes to Abu Simbel, from Memphis to Abydos, he orders the construction of temples, sanctuaries, obelisks, and colossal statues. His reign becomes a golden age of art and monumentality, his name etched upon more stone than any ruler before or after. To the Egyptians, this is divine order, made visible the manifestation of Ma'at in the language of architecture. You first find yourself in Thebes, the city of Amun. Here, Ramses expands the temple of Luxor, adding grand colonnades that stretch toward the heavens. Massive papyrus-shaped columns rise from the floor like a petrified forest, their capitals blossoming beneath painted ceilings of stars. Along the walls, artisans carve scenes of the pharaoh, presenting offerings to Amun-Ra, and Mut, his body radiant, his stance immortal. The work is tireless. The chisels sing day and night, cutting his story into eternity. The murals blaze with color, ochre turquoise and lapis glowing even in the dim torchlight. You hear the whispers of the workers as they labor. Pharaoh is the son of Ra. His temples are the steps by which the gods descend. From Thebes, Ramses' ambitions turns south deep into Nubia, where the cliffs rise, sheer and sun-scorched above the Nile. Here near the borderlands he conceives a monument so audacious it seems born from the dreams of the gods themselves, Abu Simbel. It begins as a challenge to the earth. The mountain is solid sandstone, vast and unyielding, but Ramses commands and men obey. Thousands of workers gather beneath the blazing sun, carving, cutting and clearing. Year after year the facade begins to emerge, 4 colossal statues, each 70 feet high, each the image of Ramses himself seated upon his throne. You stand before them as their faces take shape, calm, regal, unblinking, their gaze turned eastward to greet the rising sun. The craftsmanship is so perfect that when dawn breaks, the first rays of light strike their faces as though Ra himself wakes his earthly son. And within the mountain a temple takes form. Its corridors are lined with carvings of gods and pharaohs' battles and offerings. The walls tell the story of Kadesh, of divine victory and cosmic harmony. In the innermost sanctuary, 4 statues sit in eternal darkness: Ptah, Amun-Ra, Ra-Horakhti, and Ramses himself, the living god among gods. Twice a year the sun's light pierces the chamber, illuminating all but Ptah, the god of shadow. You can almost feel it, that silent moment when the dawn beam strikes Ramses' face, a reminder that his bond with Ra transcends even stone. It is not a temple, it is a resurrection. But the pharaoh's devotion is not only to himself. To the north of Abu Simbel he builds another temple, smaller but no less divine, for his beloved queen Nefertari. The facade shows her equal in scale to her husband, an honor no other queen has known. Above the doorway the words carved in stone proclaim, "For whom the sun rises." Inside the walls bloom with images of Nefertari as the goddess Hathor, playing the sistrum, wearing the horns and solar disk. The temple glows with tenderness and reverence, a love letter written in sandstone and sunlight. And yet Ramses' ambitions still reach further. Back in Thebes he commissions a vast mortuary temple upon the west bank, a monument to his divine legacy, the Ramesseum. You cross the Nile in silence to approach it, its pylons towering over the fields of grain and tombs. The facade is lined with reliefs showing the pharaoh smiting enemies, riding into battle, receiving tribute from distant lands. The halls stretch in solemn grandeur, filled with columns and colossal statues. The largest, once 60 feet tall, now lies fallen, its broken head gazing at the sky. But even in ruin it feels alive, eternal, indomitable. Here Ramses intends that his spirit will dwell forever, surrounded by offerings and hymns, bathed in incense, sustained by the prayers of priests. It is both temple and tomb, a bridge between life and the afterlife. In the cool shade of the hypostyle hall you hear the murmurs of the priests reciting verses from the Book of the Dead. Their voices echo through the columns like wind through reeds. He who builds for the gods shall live in their company forever. Everywhere you look, Ramses' image dominates Egypt's landscape. His face watches from temple gates, from colossal seated figures, from stelae carved into mountain sides. Travelers along the Nile cannot look anywhere without seeing him, the divine ruler who has made himself as eternal as the stars. And yet there is purpose behind the grandeur. Ramses knows that stone endures when memory fades. He knows that power, true power, is not merely rule over men, but over time itself. Each statue, each carving, each temple is a fragment of his immortality. You walk beside him one evening as he inspects the nearly completed Ramesseum. The setting sun burns crimson behind the pylons, casting long shadows across the stone. Ramses stands silent for a moment, his gaze tracing the inscriptions on the walls. "Do you think men will remember me?" he asks his chief architect. The man bows. "My lord, so long as the sun rises, your name will live." Ramses smiles faintly. "Then let it rise forever." The sound of the river drifts through the air, soft and endless. Workers set down their tools, priests light torches along the colonnades, and the temple glows with a golden radiance. You feel the air hum with something vast, the weight of divine ambition fulfilled, the whisper of eternity being carved one stroke at a time. And as the stars emerge above the horizon, their cold light shimmering against the sandstone, you realize what Ramses has done. He has bound himself to the cosmos, not through blood or war, but through creation, through beauty that defies decay. The gods may rule the heavens, but Ramses rules the earth. And in his temples of light and shadow, both will meet forever. Beloved of the god, the temples are complete, their stones whispering hymns to heaven. The statues rise like mountains of light. From Abu Simbel to Thebes, from Pi-Ramesse to the delta marshes, Egypt glows with the mark of Ramses II, not just a king, but a god among men. You drift through his world now, where the line between mortal and divine dissolves beneath the endless Nile sun. The priests call him Usamatre Setepenre. The justice of Ra is powerful, the chosen of Ra. Every title, every name he bears ties him closer to the gods. Ramses, son of Ra, beloved of Amun, favored of Ptah, strong in Maat. His face carved on every wall reflects not vanity but devotion, the belief that Pharaoh is the vessel through which the gods sustain the world. You stand in the great temple of Amun at Karnak, incense swirling in the air, sunlight filtering through the towering columns. The priests chant in long rhythmic tones, their white robes fluttering like wings. Ramses enters the sanctuary, his figure radiant in gold and lapis. The murmurs fall silent. He kneels before the statue of Amun-Ra, hands raised, eyes closed. The temple seems to breathe with him, torches, flickering drums pulsing in time with his heartbeat. O Amun, he prays you, who gave me strength in battle, who fills the Nile and commands the sun. I am your son upon this earth. May my reign reflect your eternity. May Egypt shine with your light. The high priest steps forward, pouring oil upon his brow. As Ra renews the sun each morning, he intones, so Pharaoh renews the world. Egypt stands because you stand, O Ramses, beloved of the gods. The crowd answers with one voice, life, prosperity, health to Pharaoh forever. It is more than worship. It is ritualized order, the pulse of the cosmos itself. The people of Egypt believe that their ruler is the living embodiment of divine balance. His every act sustains the harmony between heaven and earth, between the gods and the Nile, between chaos and creation. You walk among the crowds who bow as Ramses passes. Farmers, soldiers, artisans, and scribes all lower their heads, not merely in obedience, but in reverence. They believe that the warmth of the sun upon their fields is the blessing of their Pharaoh, that each flood of the Nile is his mercy, that the very turning of the seasons depends upon his favor. In the temples, his image stands beside those of the gods themselves. In reliefs and murals he is depicted offering incense to Amun crowned by Rahorakti embraced by Hathor. In one he stands shoulder to shoulder with Osiris, ruler of the underworld, as if to say, even in death Pharaoh is divine. But Ramses understands the deeper truth that faith is power, and power must be tended like the sacred fire. He strengthens the priesthood, restores temples, and ensures that the wealth of Egypt flows through the sanctuaries of its gods. He walks often among the high priests, speaking softly, asking questions. "Is Amun content?" he inquires. "Do the people still honor the old ways?" "Yes, my lord," they reply. "Your name is spoken in every prayer." Still Ramses ensures that his own divinity does not fade. At Pi-Ramesse he builds shrines to himself, the temple of millions of years where offerings are made not just to Amun or Ra, but to Ramses, the great lord of eternity. Festivals are held in his honor, priests chant his hymns, statues of his likeness receive food and drink as though feeding the spirit of a god already eternal. You walk through one such ceremony on the banks of the Nile. The air is alive with music, sistrums rattling, flutes, sighing drums echoing like distant thunder. The priests of Ptah carry an effigy of Ramses from the temple, its golden face reflecting the sunlight. The people follow in a long procession, scattering flowers and burning incense. "The living Horus walks among us," they cry. "He who conquered Kadesh, he who builds for the gods." The air thickens with devotion, and for a moment you understand the spell Egypt casts upon the world. Here, time itself bends around belief. To the people, Ramses is no mere man. He is the center of the universe, a being through whom creation continues one heartbeat at a time. And yet even as faith lifts him above the mortal realm, Ramses remains deeply aware of its weight. He knows that divinity is not privilege but responsibility. Each morning as the sun rises, he stands before his window to greet it. The same ritual repeats without fail, arms raised, eyes closed, the golden light upon his face. Ra rises anew, he whispers. So must I. There are nights, however, when he stands alone beneath the stars. The sky above Egypt burns with uncountable points of light, the souls of the blessed dead, the eternal fires of the gods. He gazes at them silent and thoughtful. Am I truly their equal, he wonders, or only their echo? You sense a flicker of humility within him, rare but real. For all his might, Ramses knows that even the living gods of Egypt must one day yield to time. His temples may endure, his name may be sung, but the breath of life, the warmth of flesh, these too must pass. Perhaps it is this awareness that deepens his faith. He prays more fervently, builds more passionately, rules with renewed devotion. Each festival, each offering, each carved inscription becomes an act of defiance against the inevitable. One morning, in the temple courtyard of Thebes, an aged priest bows before him. You have built for the gods as no pharaoh before you, the priest says. But know this, O Ramses, you have also built for men. In honoring the divine, you have made all Egypt immortal. Ramses looks upon him and smiles, his expression soft, almost weary. Then let the gods judge whether I have earned their company. He turns toward the rising sun. The light floods the courtyard, painting his golden armor in fire. The priests kneel, the crowd bows, and once more the cycle renews. Pharaoh as the sun, Egypt as his reflection, faith as the bridge between man and eternity. You stand there feeling the warmth of that light on your skin. It is not the light of a distant god, nor of a forgotten past. It is the light of human will made divine, the power of belief, carved into the bones of a civilization. And as the Nile flows beyond the temple walls carrying offerings downstream toward the sea, you understand Ramses II has not only ruled Egypt, he has become Egypt, its heart, its voice, its immortal flame. Queen's wives in the royal line, night descends upon the palaces of Pi-Ramesse, and the golden lamps flicker in the still air. The Nile hums softly beyond the courtyards, its surface shimmering with moonlight. You drift now into the heart of Ramses' private world, beyond the temples, beyond the battlefields, into the chambers of his palace where the pharaoh, though worshipped as a god, lives also as a man. Behind the public image of divine majesty lies another story, one woven of love, lineage and legacy. Ramses II is not only a ruler of empires, he is the father of dynasties, the husband of queens, the shaper of bloodlines that will carry Egypt's name for generations. Among his many wives, one name burns brightest, Nefertari. Her name means the beautiful companion, and history remembers her not merely for beauty, but for brilliance. She is said to have spoken several languages, to have written poetry, and to have advised Ramses on matters of diplomacy. Together they embody a partnership that transcends both politics and mortality. You find her now walking beside Ramses through the gardens of Thebes. The night air is heavy with the scent of jasmine and lotus. Lamps glow between the papyrus stalks. Their steps are slow, unhurried, as though time itself pauses in their presence. You have given peace to Egypt, she tells him. Now give peace to yourself. Ramses smiles faintly, his hand brushing hers. A pharaoh cannot rest, he says. Not while eternity still waits to be built. She gazes up at him, her eyes dark, her voice soft. Then build something that will never fade. Not of stone, but of devotion. And he does. Far to the south, near the cliffs of Abu Simbel, Ramses orders a temple carved into the mountain itself, not for Ra or Amun, but for her. The temple of Hathor and Nefertari. On its facade, 6 colossal figures stand in eternal vigil, 4 of Ramses, 2 of Nefertari. She stands equal beside him, the only queen in Egyptian history to be depicted on the same scale as the pharaoh himself. You stand before those figures as they take shape under the chisels of the artisans. The morning sun spills across the cliffs, turning them to flame. The workers whisper prayers as they carve her serene face, her crown of feathers and solar disk. Inside the chambers bloom with colour Nefertari as goddess playing the sistrum, offering flowers to Hathor. Her beauty eternalized in pigments that seem to breathe. Above the entrance, Ramses has ordered an inscription to be carved for my beloved Nefertari, for whom the sun rises. The words shimmer in the light like poetry written by the gods themselves. When she dies, Thebes mourns. Ramses orders her tomb to be carved deep within the Valley of the Queens, the most splendid of all. Inside her resting chamber glows with celestial blue stars painted across the ceiling, her journey through the afterlife guided by the gods. In her hand she holds the Ankh symbol of life everlasting. Her husband's image appears beside her, a promise that love like empire endures beyond death. But Nefertari is only one jewel in the crown of Ramses' household. As pharaoh, he takes many wives, both Egyptian and foreign, not only for affection, but for alliance. After the Treaty of Kadesh, he marries a Hittite princess, sealing peace with diplomacy, as eternal as the temples. The wedding procession sails down the Nile under banners of silver and gold. The priests sing, the people cheer. Egypt and Hatti, once enemies, are now bound by blood. In time, another Hittite princess joins the royal household, and the bond between the two great empires deepens further. Let the world see Ramses says that peace can be as mighty as war. Within the palace walls, life is a symphony of splendor. The royal apartments overflow with music, laughter, and the sweet scent of lotus oil. Children play in the courtyards, dozens of them princes and princesses born of the pharaoh's many queens and consorts. It is said that Ramses fathered over 100 sons and 50 daughters, a living lineage that spreads across the empire like branches of a sacred tree. Each child bears a name invoking the gods: Amun-her-Khepeshef, Ramesses, Pi-Ramesse, Meremptah. The pharaoh's eldest son, Amun-her-Khepeshef, commands armies in his father's name. His second, Pi-Ramesse, becomes high priest of Ptah in Memphis, a scholar, an architect, a restorer of ancient monuments. In time, he will be remembered as one of Egypt's first archaeologists, protector of the tombs of the ancestors. You can almost see Ramses watching his sons train in the palace courtyard, some with bows, others with scrolls, while the queens and princesses sit beneath the shade of palm trees, their laughter mingling with the songs of birds. The pharaoh's gaze is steady, his pride unmistakable. "They are my eternity," he murmurs. "As long as my sons live, my name will not fade." But even amidst this abundance, loss finds its way. Time, ever patient, begins to take those closest to him. First Nefertari, then sons who fall to illness or battle. The halls that once rang with laughter sometimes echo now with memory. And though Ramses never falters in public in the quiet hours, he walks the corridors of his palace alone, touching the carved images of his family that adorn the walls. One evening, you find him standing before a relief showing Nefertari and their children. The torchlight flickers across the stone, bringing the faces to life. He reaches out his fingers, tracing the curve of her hand. "Even the gods cannot change this," he whispers, "but perhaps they can preserve it." And so he continues to build temples, statues, tombs, each carrying the faces of those he loved. His family becomes immortal in art, their forms woven into the very narrative of Egypt's greatness. The living and the dead coexist in stone, bound by the pharaoh's will. As the years pass, the sons of Ramses grow into governors, priests, and generals. His 13th son, Meremptah, will one day inherit the throne, carrying the flame of the 19th dynasty into a new era. The daughters of Ramses marry nobles, high priests, and princes, ensuring his bloodline flows through every corner of the empire. The pharaoh grows older, but his legacy multiplies. His family is not merely his private joy, it is his living monument. Through them his name becomes not one, but many, his rule not one lifetime, but generations. You step once more into the twilight of Pi-Ramesse. The palace is quiet, its halls lit by oil lamps and perfumed with frankincense. Ramses sits alone by a window, gazing toward the moonlit Nile. Somewhere in the darkness, the voices of his grandchildren echo like soft music. He smiles, faint and distant. "The gods granted me more than power," he says softly. "They gave me time and love enough to fill eternity." And as the wind stirs through the papyrus reeds, carrying the laughter of his descendants, you realize that for all his conquests and monuments, this, the dynasty he leaves behind, is his truest victory, the empire of endless monument. The sun climbs once more over Egypt, and its first light glances off countless peaks of stone temples, statues, obelisks, and pillars, each bearing the same sacred name, Ramses Beloved, of Amun, ruler of eternity. You drift through this world of gold and sandstone, where every horizon gleams with his likeness, every wind carries the echo of his reign. It is no longer just a kingdom, it is a vast, living monument. From the delta marshes to the Nubian cliffs, the land of the Nile hums with construction. Ramses' architects, artisans, and laborers form the beating heart of an empire obsessed with remembrance. They move like the rhythm of the river itself, carrying stone pigment and faith. In this late age of his reign, Ramses has become something more than mortal, a man determined to defeat time itself. At Thebes, the vast temples of Amun still grow their pylons towering like gateways to heaven. Ramses' artisans carve his image, presenting offerings to the gods, his cartouches stretched across the walls like constellations. Each symbol, the sun disk, the falcon, the lotus, speaks of life, rebirth, and divine power. The halls echo with chants of priests whose voices rise and fall like the breathing of eternity. At Memphis, the priests of Ptah record his deeds in sacred texts, declaring, "He has built as the gods once built, so that heaven and earth shall never forget his name." And at Pi-Ramesse, his great capital life swells like a flood tide. The streets bustle with soldiers, merchants, scribes, and foreign envoys. The sound of chisels and drums never ceases. Every dawn new statues are raised. Every dusk new walls are inscribed. Bronze tools strike sparks as workers carve his victories, the Battle of Kadesh, the Treaty of Peace, the festivals of Amun, the coronation, the offerings, the divine embrace of Ra. You wander through one of these newly finished temples. Columns painted in red and blue soar above their capitals, blooming with papyrus flowers. Along the walls, scenes of Ramses' life unfold in perfect rhythm, the king leading his chariot into battle, the king standing before the gods, the king crowned by Isis herself. The effect is hypnotic, a universe with one central sun, his name burning at its core. Everywhere the same question whispers beneath the stone: can eternity be built? Ramses believes it can. You find him at the Ramesseum, the grand temple of his mortuary cult. The air hums with the ringing of hammers, the scrape of chisel against granite. The pharaoh stands beneath the half-finished colossi statues, so immense that the laborers seem like ants beside them. His face is older now, lined by years and sunlight, but his gaze remains fierce alive. "How many will remember me?" he asks his chief architect. The man bows. "All who live beneath the sun, my lord." Ramses nods slowly. "Then let us make the sun our witness." He points toward the great pylon. "Carve this: he who builds as the gods built his works shall never die." The architect nods, and his men set to work. The sound of chiseling fills the air once more, a hymn of effort and devotion. But the monuments are not only acts of pride, they are instruments of belief. To the Egyptians, the pharaoh's likeness carved in stone is more than symbol. It is spirit made visible. Each statue is a vessel for the king's ka, his life force, ensuring that his essence inhabits every corner of Egypt. To destroy such a likeness would be to wound the soul itself, and so Ramses ensures his immortality by multiplication. No other ruler has built on such a scale. Colossi of his image guard temples and city gates. Obelisks bearing his name pierced the sky. In Nubia, along the borderlands, his face watches from cliffs and rocks carved into the wilderness to remind friend and foe alike Here begins Egypt, and Egypt is eternal. You travel now across that landscape. The Nile glides below like a mirror to heaven. At every bend another monument gleams: Abu Simbel Luxor, the Ramesseum, the temples of Abydos, the shrines of Memphis. The earth itself seems to bear his signature. Travelers from foreign lands write of their awe. Phoenicians, Libyans, and Hittites speak of the golden land of Ramses. In the markets of Pi-Ramesse, merchants display scarabs stamped with his name. Children learn to write by copying his cartouche. Even in distant villages, peasants sing songs of the Pharaoh who built forever. One evening you find him walking along the terrace of his palace as the sunset bathes the world in crimson light. The horizon blazes with gold, and in its glow the temples seem to shimmer like the very bones of the gods. Ramses gazes out in silence. "When I was a child," he says softly, "my father told me that the world ends where the memory of Egypt fades. I have made it so that there is no end." He turns to his scribe. "Write this for the future: I have conquered not only the north and south, but the river of time itself. I have placed my name in the mouth of eternity." The scribe bows deeply and begins to write, and indeed Ramses's reign stretches on year after year, decade after decade. 40 years pass, then 50, then 60. His monuments multiply like stars. Travelers crossing the deserts of Nubia call him the Lord of the Dawn. Poets in foreign courts sing of his splendor. To his people he has become more than a pharaoh. He is the living embodiment of Egypt itself. Yet there is something haunting in his pursuit of immortality. You sense it in the quiet between the hammer strikes, in the soft sigh of wind across the stone. Beneath the grandeur lies an unspoken fear, the same fear that haunts every mortal heart, the shadow of forgetting. One night Ramses walks through the halls of the Ramesseum alone. The torches flicker, dust drifts like golden smoke in the air. He pauses before a colossal statue of himself, half completed, its eyes blank and uncarved. "Even stone will break," he murmurs. "But perhaps not before I do." He lifts his hand and touches the cold surface. "When this body is gone, this will remain. When this too is gone, the gods will remember. That is enough." The wind stirs, carrying the scent of the Nile. Outside, the moonlight glides across the statues, illuminating their faces one by one, the eternal watchers of a vanished age. And you realize that Ramses' dream has already succeeded. Through temples and carvings, through stone and scripture, he has woven himself into the very breath of Egypt. His heart beats in every wall, his voice whispers in every glyph. The empire he has built is not merely of land or power, it is an empire of memory, of faith, of human will refusing to fade. As the night deepens, the torches burn low. Ramses turns toward the river, his shadow merging with the colossal forms around him. And for one still infinite moment he seems truly eternal, a man who became a monument, and a monument that became a god. The later years. The air above Egypt grows softer now, the heat less harsh, the light more golden like an old lamp dimming at dusk. You drift once more along the Nile, and the world around you feels older too. The temples still stand, the statues still watch, the priests still chant his name. Usamatre, Sete Penre, Ramses, beloved of Ra. But the man who built this world is no longer young. Decades have passed since the battles of Kadesh. Decades since Nefertari's laughter filled the palace halls. Ramses has ruled for more than 60 years, longer than most men can dream, longer than any pharaoh before him. His hair is silver now, his face lined with the passage of time. And yet when he walks through the courtyards of Pi-Ramesse, the people still bow as though the sun itself passes before them. The empire he forged remains strong, but the edges of it tremble. In distant provinces, governors grow bold. Nubia and Canaan whisper of rebellion. The Hittite alliance holds, yet only barely sustained by oaths and the shared weight of age. The world beyond Egypt begins to shift. New tribes wander from the north. Strange peoples stir along the coasts. Still Ramses governs with a mind as sharp as a falcon's eye. Every morning as dawn spills over the palace, he sits upon his throne to hear petitions. Farmers and merchants, priests and generals all bring their troubles to the pharaoh. His voice is quieter now, yet carries the same authority. Peace is a delicate thing, he says one morning to his son and successor Meremptah. It is not silence, it is vigilance. The Nile must be watched, the borders guarded, the people fed, or the gods will turn their faces away. Meremptah bows his eyes solemn. You have built an empire no man can surpass, father. Ramses smiles faintly. Then see that you do not let it crumble. A pharaoh's greatest monument is not his temple, but his people. Outside the window, the city hums, traders, shouting chariots, clattering children, playing in the courtyards of schools founded under his reign. Ramses listens to the sound as if to reassure himself that Egypt still breathes. As the years turn, festivals continue in his honor. Each decade, the priests of Amun celebrate his Heb-Sed festival, the ancient ritual of rejuvenation. On that day, Ramses dons the white robe of kingship and runs ceremonially around the temple courtyard, proving to all that the spirit of Ra still burns within him. Thousands gather to watch, chanting his names: Ramses the Mighty, Ramses the Eternal. He completes the circuit slower than in his youth, but still proud, still upright. The priests declare his vitality renewed, his divine right reaffirmed. The people cheer, weeping with devotion. And for a moment you could almost believe the gods truly have restored his strength. Yet the mortal body cannot escape time. At night, in his private chamber, Ramses feels the weight of the years pressing upon him. His joints ache, his breath grows shallow. He walks slowly now, leaning on a staff carved with the image of Horus. One evening, he sits beside a brazier, its embers glowing faintly in the dark. Around him, scrolls and letters are scattered petitions from governors' records of offerings and hymns written in his praise. He traces the hieroglyphs with a thin, trembling finger. So much. Written in my name, he murmurs, but whose name will I speak when mine is no longer spoken? He turns to his scribe. Write this for my tomb: I was the keeper of balance. I built for the gods as they built the world. I lived long enough to see my children rule and their children after them. That is enough. Beyond his chamber, the palace of Pi-Ramesse continues its endless rhythm, the clatter of stonework, the murmuring of priests, the laughter of servants. But the pharaoh's world has grown smaller, quieter. The grand campaigns of youth are distant memories, the triumphs of Kadesh and Abu Simbel, now stories told by old soldiers to their sons. You see him in the temple of Ra, kneeling before the altar, as the high priest anoints him for what may be the last time. The air is thick with incense, the light of the setting sun filters through the open doorway, bathing the sanctuary in gold. O Ra, Ramses, praise you has given me the years of 2 lifetimes. I have walked in your light and built in your name. If my time is ending, let my soul rise with you at dawn. Let Egypt endure. The priest bows deeply. Your reign will never end, great Lord. Your temples will outlast the mountains. Your name will be carved in the stars. Ramses smiles not with pride, but with peace. Then let it be carved in the hearts of men, he says, softly. As months pass, he withdraws more often to his palace by the river. He spends his days among his family, surrounded by sons, daughters, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. It is said that when he dines, more than 100 of his descendants sit at his table. The laughter of children fills the air, and for a time he seems young again. On quiet afternoons he takes his chariot, drawn now by gentle horses, to the edge of the city. There, overlooking the waters, he gazes toward the horizon where the sun descends. "So much I have built," he murmurs. "Yet the river still flows as it did before me. The gods are wise. You sense that he no longer fears death. In his eyes there is serenity, the calm of a man who has seen all, done all, and finally understood that immortality lies not only in stone, but in memory. When at last the end comes, it is gentle. The court physicians say he simply fell asleep in the light of afternoon. The palace grows still, the servants bow their heads, the city falls into mourning. The priests of Thebes and Memphis light incense across the land. From Nubia to the Delta, the people chant his name. Ramses the Great, he lives forever. His body, wrapped in linen and resin, is carried down the Nile in a golden barge. The river moves silently, reflecting the sky like a mirror of eternity. The boat drifts past temples and statues, past the fields he built, past the tombs of kings who came before him. At Thebes, the priests of Ammon receive him. The Ramesseum glows with torchlight as they recite their hymns of passage. May your soul rise with the sun. May your name live as long as the stars endure. And so the Pharaoh passes from the world of men into the realm of gods. The sun sets, the Nile flows on. The monuments stand unmoved, but if you listen closely, you can still hear him in the wind, the voice of the living God, the builder of eternity, whispering across the sands, "I am Ramses, beloved of Ra. I was, I am, and I shall be again, death of a living God." The night of the Pharaoh's passing descends upon Egypt like a slow eclipse. Torches flicker along the banks of the Nile, and 1,000 priests whisper hymns to guide a soul through eternity. You drift through the corridors of Pi-Ramesse, now draped in linen and silence. Every room smells of resin, cedar oil, and tears. The servants kneel, the scribes lower their quills. Even the wind seems to hush as the body of Ramses II, the living god, begins its final journey. He has ruled for 66 years. The world beyond his lifetime is almost unimaginable. He was crowned when Egypt's great-grandfathers still remembered his father Seti. Now his children are grey-haired, his grandchildren already rulers and priests. Few alive can recall a time before Ramses the Great. In the royal chamber, priests of Anubis, the god of embalming, prepare the sacred rites. The air hums with chanting. The high priest raises his voice, "O mighty one, you have joined Ra in his evening bark. You travel now through the night to rise again with the dawn." The ceremony begins. You stand at a respectful distance as the ritual unfolds, ancient, precise, and eternal. The embalmers work in silence, their movements as disciplined as a priest's prayer. With obsidian blades they open the body of the pharaoh, removing the organs that once sustained his mortal life. Each is washed in wine and palm oil, wrapped in linen, and sealed within canopic jars, the lungs guarded by Hapi, the intestines by Duamutef, the stomach by Kabesenuef, and the liver by Seti. The heart seat of the soul they leave untouched. Ramses will need it when he stands before Osiris, Lord of the afterlife, to have his heart weighed against the feather of Ma'at. Next they purify the body with natron salts 40 days and nights of waiting as the moisture leaves and the flesh turns to gold-like preservation. Each dawn the priests recite the same refrain, "You are not dead, O Pharaoh. You are awake in the west. You sleep only as Ra sleeps to rise again. When the time comes, they anoint him in oils of myrrh and frankincense, their scent rising sweet and solemn. They wrap his body in hundreds of yards of linen, layer upon layer, whisper upon whisper. Between each layer amulets are placed, the scarab of transformation, the eye of Horus for protection, the ankh for life everlasting. The priests murmur over each token, sealing its power with divine words. The Book of the Dead lies open nearby, its pages painted with scenes of the afterlife. Ramses's soul, they believe, will walk these paths across deserts of flame, past lakes of serpents, through gates guarded by demons. He will recite the secret names of the gods as written in the sacred text, and sail with Ra through the 12 hours of night toward rebirth. When the final linen shroud is bound, the mask of gold is placed upon his face, serene, majestic, and eternal. The eyes are of obsidian and quartz, reflecting the flicker of torchlight like living fire. The crown of uraeus cobras gleams upon his brow, symbol of kingship even beyond death. The priests bow deeply. Behold, the high priest says the son of Ra returns to the heavens. Then the procession begins. The golden sarcophagus is lifted by sacred bearers, its weight carried as though by divine strength. Musicians play flutes and sistrums, their melodies rising through the dusk like prayers. Along the riverbank, thousands gather in silence, heads bowed. They watch as the royal barge, gilded and adorned with lotus flowers, drifts from the palace into the current. The Nile glows beneath the moon, carrying the pharaoh toward Thebes, toward the Valley of the Kings, where generations of rulers await him. The journey takes days. Each night the priests light lamps on the deck, so that his spirit may follow the stars. Each morning the people line the shores, chanting his name, Ramses the Great, the Eternal One, the sun who never sets. At last the barge arrives at Thebes. The cliffs rise around you, glowing pale in the morning light. The Ramesseum stands silent, its statues like sentinels of stone. Beyond it lies the entrance to his tomb, a passage carved deep into the living rock. Torches illuminate its painted corridors, their walls alive with scenes from his reign. Ramses crowned by Ra, Ramses defeating his enemies, Ramses offering incense to Amun. Every image glows with vivid color, blue as the sky, red as the desert, gold as the sun. The air smells of resin and honeyed smoke. As the priests descend, their voices echo through the chambers. Enter in peace, O Pharaoh. May your soul find the field of reeds. May your heart be light, and your name live forever. They place his sarcophagus within its chamber, surrounded by treasures, chariots, thrones, jewelry, and the miniature models of ships and servants that will serve him in eternity. Over the doorway they carve a final invocation. He who built for the gods shall dwell among them forever. The final moment comes. The high priest raises a torch. The door will close, he says softly, but the sun will rise again. The sarcophagus gleams one last time in the torchlight. Then the stone door slides shut, sealing the pharaoh from the world of the living. The sound is deep, final, the turning of an age. Outside, the priests pour libations upon the ground and raise their hands to the sky. Ra has taken his son, they chant. Egypt endures. Pharaoh endures. The world endures, and indeed Egypt continues. Fields flood temples, echo the Nile flows, as it always has. Yet something in the air feels different, quieter, as though the heartbeat of the land now moves beneath the sand. In the centuries that follow, thieves and time itself will find the tomb. The sarcophagus will be moved, hidden, preserved by chance and reverence. But the body of Ramses will survive, his face still calm, his teeth still bright, his hands still folded in eternal peace. When future generations uncover him, they will gaze upon the same features that ruled the ancient world and whisper in awe, "This is him, the living God." You stand one last time in the valley of the kings. The air is still. The cliffs glow with the dying sun. Somewhere beneath your feet, Ramses sleeps, the builder, the conqueror, the beloved of the gods. And as the wind moves through the desert, carrying grains of sand across the stones of his temple, you can almost hear his voice again. Gentle, distant, eternal. I am Ramses. I have conquered death not by the sword, but by the chisel. My name is the Nile, my kingdom is the sun.
Legacy in stone and memory.
The desert sleeps beneath the eternal sun, its sands whispering secrets older than kings. Time moves on, patient and endless. Centuries pass, dynasties rise and fall, empires come and go, yet the name Ramses remains. You drift now through the silence of ages, across ruins and riverbanks, where his memory lingers like sunlight on stone. The Nile still winds through Egypt, unchanged and unbroken, carrying silt and song from the mountains of Africa to the Mediterranean Sea. Along its banks, the colossal temples of Ramses II still stand, weathered but undefeated. The faces of his statues stare across the centuries, their eyes calm, their lips fixed in that faint, knowing smile of eternity. At Abu Simbel, dawn continues to perform its ancient miracle. Twice each year, the rising sun pierces the heart of the mountain and floods the inner sanctuary with light. For a few minutes, the faces of Ra-Horakhti Amun-Ra and Ramses himself glow as if awakened by divine fire. The same beam of sunlight that once touched his living skin still honors his likeness in stone. Travelers stand in silence as it happens, feeling the breath of the ancient world pass over them. In Thebes, the Ramesseum lies in noble ruin. The statues have fallen, yet their grandeur remains. The toppled head of Ramses, cracked and half-buried, gazes serenely at the sky. The poet Shelley, thousands of years later, will stand before it and write, "My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair." He will not know that Ozymandias is another name for Ramses, that the ruin he describes is but one of countless echoes. Even in decay, the pharaoh's shadow looms large, teaching each generation that time can humble pride, yet cannot erase greatness. In Luxor, the great colonnades still tower over the city, their hieroglyphs sharp against the setting sun. The walls whisper stories of a king who refused to be forgotten, who carved his name, not for vanity, but for memory. The people who pass beneath those columns no longer bow or pray, but they look upward with the same awe once reserved for gods. Deep within the Valley of the Kings, his tomb remains hidden for millennia, its corridors sealed in silence. Thieves come and go, dynasties crumble, the sands shift. Yet his mummy endures, preserved by faith and desert air. When at last it is found, thousands of years after his death, those who look upon his face see something almost miraculous. His skin, though dry, still bears the lines of life. His teeth, perfect and white, still form that unmistakable smile, and the world remembers him anew. In the 19th century, explorers and archaeologists uncover his temples, his statues, his words. The West rediscovers Egypt through him. His monuments are sketched, photographed, and studied. The mummy of Ramses the Great is carried to Cairo, examined by scientists who marvel at the craftsmanship of his preservation. Even under the bright lights of a modern world, he commands reverence. When French officials grant his body a passport to travel for restoration, it bears his title, King of Egypt, deceased. As his plane lands in Paris, crowds gather to salute. Military honors are given as if the great Pharaoh has returned from the sands to walk among men once more. And in that moment, across 3,000 years, Ramses fulfills his promise. His name still commands nations. His presence still bends time. You wander again through his world, a world of sand and shadow, of gods and men. His cities have turned to dust. His palaces vanished beneath centuries of silence. Yet his legacy endures not only in stone but in the human imagination. Every obelisk that pierces a modern skyline, every museum that glows with relics of ancient Egypt, every whisper of pyramids beneath the stars, all echo the dream Ramses built, the dream of eternity. The pharaoh's name has crossed languages and faiths. To the ancient Hebrews, he became the memory of an empire both magnificent and terrible. To the Greeks, he was the image of the perfect ruler. To poets and scholars, he is the eternal symbol of ambition and impermanence, of the man who built to defy oblivion. And yet to those who stand before his temples today, the feeling is not pride, but wonder. For beneath the grandeur lies a deeper truth. Ramses' greatness was not in conquest alone, but in creation. He built not just to glorify himself, but to bind man and God, heaven and earth life, and afterlife into one unbroken continuum. The sun sets over Abu Simbel, and the cliffs glow like fire. Pilgrims and travelers linger in the courtyard, their voices hushed. The great statues fade into shadow, but their presence remains. It is said that when the wind moves through the temple gates, you can hear a low hum, a note that vibrates in the stone itself. Some call it the breath of the desert. Others say it is the whisper of Ramses' soul still speaking across time. You imagine him now not as a mummy, not as a statue, but as a spirit of the Nile. His chariot rides across the sky beside Ra. His temples stand as stars upon the earth. His words echo in every age that dares to build, to dream, to remember. He has become what he always sought, to be eternal. And as you stand beneath the same stars that watched him rule you, feel it, that quiet power that outlives empires, the pulse of memory that never fades. The Nile sighs softly in the distance, its waters glowing silver beneath the moon. Somewhere deep in the timeless rhythm of Egypt, a voice seems to whisper, "I was the builder of worlds. I raised mountains from the desert. I made the stone remember my name. And though the winds may change and the sands may cover my cities, I am still here. I am Ramses, Pharaoh of eternity." The night deepens. The desert cools. The stars wheel silently above the ancient land. You close your eyes, listening to the eternal breath of the Nile, and feel the story of Ramses king, God-man immortal, settle within you like the slow drift of sand over stone. And as the last light fades from the horizon, the voice of Egypt itself whispers, "He sleeps, but he is not gone. His name endures forever."